What's going on, y'all? Episode 4, season 2, Let's Be Real podcast, man. We're back at it. And look, we're gonna get into a lot of week 3 of the NFL today, and then we're gonna go ahead and do our look ahead to week 4 as well. Just because I won't be able to do any podcasts this weekend, just because we got some life stuff. So all good things, all good things. But with that, we're gonna hop into it. And look, I don't know if y'all can tell from the lighting and everything, but it is daytime. It is morning, and so we're not doing the wine today. I got some stuff I got to take care of. So instead, we're gonna give you the Bang Celsius, not Bang, it's Celsius retro vibe. Look, tastes like a slushy, man. If y'all haven't had retro vibe and you like Celsius, definitely try it. But that's gonna be our substitution for the wine today. But look, let's hop right into it, man. We had some really, really good games, some meaningful games in week 3. And we're gonna start off with the Chargers and Broncos, man. And look, another great, great game from Justin Herbert, who, I mean, at this point looks like he's got to be your front runner for MVP, right? Um, team is rolling. He's rolling. They are passing the ball a lot more than they did last year, and really leaning on Justin Herbert, which is again huge. Did lose Najee, so that could be maybe not detrimental, but could be a big loss moving forward. But again, with them not leaning as heavy on the run game, then it's not quite as big of a loss as it might have been if they lost their starting running back last year. And so and and their other running back looks really good anyway. So I think they're fine. Harbaugh team with that offensive line, they're going to be able to run the ball. But the real thing that we got to talk about here is Denver, man. Because look, it might be time. If you're a Denver fan, it might be time to panic this year. Look, and it's unfair to Bo Nix that we're going to judge him like this in his second year. But look, when Sean Payton comes out, who Sean Payton respected as one of the best coaches in the NFL, when he comes out and he says, I've had, 6 teams ever that I thought could win a Super Bowl, and this is one of them, that is lofty expectations. And so with that, you have to perform like that. And Bo Nix simply has just been like, he's been whatever. Hasn't been great, hasn't been terrible, terrible. He's had some bad moments, and they're 1-2. And so with Denver, man, it's again when your head coach comes out, and we talked about it some last week, just like the messaging you put behind things, right? It's different if you come out, Sean Payton comes out and he says, yeah, this is one of my most talented teams, but obviously, we have to go out, we have to win the division first, we have to get in the playoffs. And it's different if you say that as compared to, yeah, I've had 6 teams that I ever thought could win a Super Bowl, and this is number 7. Because again, that automatically puts expectations at, okay, your expectations are at the Super Bowl. And well, that might be true. Again, it's setting expectations up for now when Bo Nix isn't performing well. And again, I'm if y'all haven't watched a ton of how much I talk about Bo Nix, because I haven't talked about him too much, but he's I'm not a big believer in Bo Nix. I think he's a guy who floor is higher than most, ceiling is lower than most. So he kind of, to me, is in just a kind of average quarterback, nothing special that I see, at least. And so, but when you put those expectations of Super Bowl on him, we're gonna, magnifying glass is gonna be bigger, and especially when it's in that division where you're dealing with the Chargers, you're dealing with the Chiefs. It just it raises expectation, puts a magnifying glass on you, and so now looking at it, it's, you're 1-2, your quarterback hasn't looked great, and, your only win has come against the Titans, who are winless as of now. So again, might be a little premature as far as the coronation of the Broncos. I don't think I'd have to double check, but I don't think I had them in the playoffs this year. Like I said, I wasn't a big believer in them in the first place, but a lot of people were. And again, I think these first 3 weeks kind of just shows you we need to pump the brakes on it. But look, we're going to move over to another second-year quarterback, and that is Caleb Williams, because the Bears went into Dallas, put in work, or yeah, I think they were in Dallas. Anyways, Caleb Williams and the Bears came in, put in work against the Cowboys, and look, I think this is, again, you're talking about a Cowboys defense who just made Russell Wilson look like an MVP candidate for a week, and we saw what happened with him after one game to the Chiefs. He's now benched. And so, you take it with a grain of salt as far as what they did against that Cowboys defense. But if you're a Bears fan, if you're a Caleb fan, if you're a Ben Johnson fan, I'm the last two, not a Bears fan, but I do like Caleb. I do like Ben Johnson. I thought that was going to be a good match. It gives you some signs of hope. You go out, you put up 31, the offense looked good. And then that defense that, has looked really, really shaky early, it came alive with some help to a CeeDee Lamb injury. But, and we're going to get to that here in a second. But I think if you're the Bears, it kind of gives you some hope. Like I said, I had him in the playoffs this year. And as somebody who had him in the playoffs, that win gives me some hope. Like, okay, you come in, you win this next week, week 4, you have your bye, you're 2-2. You can kind of, take this as a reset moment and kind of move forward from there. I think this can be a right the ship kind of game. And so, again, it's going to be heavily dependent on what they do coming out in week 4, as far as if, they are trending towards that playoff team that I think they can be, or if it's just kind of, we saw them play a really, really bad defense, and they're who they actually are as the team we saw in weeks 1 and 2. And for the other side of this, man, look, the Cowboys. And y'all know I love nothing more than talking about how bad the Cowboys are as an Eagles fan. But let's be real here. So the Cowboys, I think what you saw last night was just a total just validation of who exactly we thought the Cowboys were coming into this year. We didn't think their defense was great. They got shredded by an offense that had looked shaky at times. We thought their offense could be great, but is very just heavily dependent on CeeDee Lamb, Jake Ferguson, and Dak Prescott. And we saw that in that game. They had the trade to get rid of Micah. And they said, no, we're still in win now mode. This is a move that's going to make our team better. Look at Micah against the run. It's been, he's been bad against the run. And you saw this week was the first time since college that Caleb hasn't been sacked in a game. Seems like they could use a pass rusher. And so, again, it's just, this game was just kind of a validation of anybody who had doubts about the Cowboys, and basically anybody who thought the opposite of Jerry Jones. This is a fully vindicating game for you. And so, look, we saw with the Cowboys, you see CeeDee Lamb go down and, obviously looked bad. Reports are it's a high ankle sprain. We'll see how long he's out. I've had a high ankle sprain before, not playing football. And so even if it's like grade 1, minor one, you're still looking at a few weeks, and then it's so easy to retweak it and hurt it again. And so, we're going to really see what this offense is going to look like when it's missing one of its highest paid players. And again, the Cowboys, their path to success this year was going to be, we're just going to have to outscore everybody, especially once you get rid of Micah Parsons. I know they're so much better against the run now that they gave up 31 to the Bears, but with that defense looking how it's looking, and I think it looks worse than I thought it would look initially. But when you look at all those advanced numbers without Micah, it's a bottom of the league defense without Micah while he was there. So it stands to reason why it's looking like a bottom of the league defense without Micah now. And so with CD down, I don't think they're going to, I just don't think they have the personnel to go out and outscore anybody. And I don't think that defense has the personnel to stop anybody, except hopefully Jerry Jones has got his fingers crossed that they can stop a running back every week. But I don't think that's going to be too big of a deal for any team when they're looking to just air it out on them. So again, I feel validated. I love talking about when the Cowboys are bad and the Cowboys make terrible decisions. And luckily they've given us so many reasons to talk bad about them and make fun of them that it makes me happy. But look, we're gonna stick in the NFC with this one. We had a nice little Bucks and Jets game. Turns out, look, first off, if you're the Bucks, this is a game that you were in firm control of, should have been taken care of early, but you ended up in a dogfight. And look, Baker Mayfield, again, coming in the clutch, fourth quarter, game on the line, making big plays, getting big first downs, and they need it against, a solid defense. And so again, just one of the reasons I was a believer in the Bucks is because I thought Baker, building off of last season, and then from what I've seen from him in big games, playoff games, fourth quarters, overtimes, I thought they'll win games in the balance, like this week. Again, tough that it's against the Jets, but you get a blocked field. They block a field goal. It's just kind of what it is. But the bigger thing for the Bucks, and we're going to talk about it later because they have a big game coming up as well, is they're starting to fall apart, and so you lose Mike Evans, which is not great. One of the reasons I really believed in this Bucks team was because I looked at the weapons they had between, you have Baker, you had a good O-line, you had Bucky Irving, you had Rashad White as a change of pace back, you have Mike Evans, Abuka, you had Godwin coming back. And so when I looked at it, I'm like, okay, their defense is solid. And on offense, their weapons are incredible. And, we're obviously Godwin hasn't come back yet. He's trending towards playing soon. Still have Abuka, but losing Mike Evans, now and then, they're down a few old linemen now. It's just, again, I had them winning the NFC. I'm probably going to have to adjust that depending on, the Mike Evans injury and these O-line injuries. But again, man, Baker just doing Baker things, pulling out a win, making big plays. And so if you're a Bucks fan, obviously it's kind of bittersweet right now because you're looking really good, but you're also pulling out some close wins and some weeks you probably shouldn't, and your injuries are mounting up. So we're going back to kind of the Dallas connection here. We had the Packers and the Browns, man. So just 1 week after we talked about the Packers talking about they might go undefeated, they lose to what many people have is one of, if not the worst team in the league, in the Browns. And so, look, I spoke on it earlier in the season. I think either after week 1 or I think it was after week 1. But I thought that the Packers, it was going to be totally dependent on Jordan Love and keeping the ball safe. And if you look at this game, man, defense did its job. Offense let them down. But even if the offense, you know, wasn't playing great, the big turning point in this game, Jordan Love interception, bad decision. And I told you, I mean, I fully believe that if Jordan Love doesn't throw that interception, this is a 10-3 game. Packers win, and we're like, oh, the offense didn't look great, but gosh, this defense. And so when, like I said, when you have a quarterback who has a propensity to give games away, and I know one of y'all in the comments was talking about Jordan Love doesn't give games away. He gives games away. But when you have a quarterback like that, it's just, again, it's why it's hard for me to put you as a true contender. Because look, the Browns defense is great. But you know when you're going to face a lot of great defenses in the playoffs. And if you go missing and you make bad crucial mistakes and put your defense into bad positions, even as talented and great as that Packers defense is, which I think is the best in the league, then it's hard for me to truly believe that you can go 2-3 rounds and win a Super Bowl. And so, again, it's just you can't give games away, and especially games like that. And it just shows that, you know, we all love the talent of Jordan Love, but when you live on making bad decisions and turning them into good plays, you also have to live with bad decisions turning into great plays for the other team. And that's what happened. Next, man, one of the most exciting games of the year so far, we had the Eagles and Rams. And so, look, first of all, if you're like me and you bet on sports some, and you thought this was the week, I thought the Eagles could lose this week. I thought they probably would. But I figured, hey, either way, going to be a close game. Welcome to the baddest beat of the year, betting-wise, with the Rams getting 3.5 points, lining up to kick a field goal to win the game. That gets blocked and then returned for a touchdown. But no, look, the game, incredible game. If y'all didn't watch it, man, you missed out. Like I said, this is probably the best game of the year up to this point. Arguably right up there with that Ravens-Bills game to start the season. But look, it didn't come without some ups and downs. And so, we had to talk about it because it's still a controversy, because we saw another tush push with another false start. And so here's one of my things now with this tush push, because now it's so heavily monitored by the broadcast and everything. And here's my take. The tush push is what all of y'all think Taylor Swift is at Chiefs games. Meaning, everybody gets so upset. Oh, the NFL, it's the camera's showing Taylor Swift at the Chiefs game. And, we get like, I think they ran the math on it. Like, it was an average of like 4-6 seconds a game as she was shown. The tush push, every tush push, we're getting replay after replay after replay. Look, the guard slightly moving here. Look, he took off here. Look, he's lined up wrong here. And we get, a good 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 2-3 minutes of analyzing the tush push and the missed calls associated with it. Bad for TV, bad for entertainment. Again, the play itself isn't entertaining and is bad for TV. But now when you're coupling it with the fact that it's so heavily scrutinized every single time they run it, and they're still missing the call even after they said the NFL came out and said, yeah, we're going to put an extra emphasis on it. And look, you saw it in the Saints game, they called it, and it's like, okay, maybe they can get this right. And then the Eagles come in, miss two of them. And again, obvious false starts. I think the first one, I was like, oh, false start. Didn't see it called and was like, that's crazy. And then you see the replay, and obviously, right guard jumps early. Again, it's just at this point, it does not seem that they can officiate it correctly, at least not consistently correctly, along with all those other reasons I've laid out last week. Look, if you didn't see the reasons I laid out last week, go back and watch it. I'm not going to repeat them all, but again, it's just it's now turned into something where it's not even just the play and then, you know, the replay after the play. It's the play, the replay after the play, the countless replays during the game of it, you know, the constant analysis of those replays during the game. It's just, again, it's becoming, the play itself not being entertaining is now turning into the broadcast becoming less entertaining because they're so focused in on this play. But moving on with that, from the Eagles' standpoint, man, look, another ugly win. Look, terrible starts, terrible first half. Again, a game that I kind of figured we were going to lose just coming in, just had depend because of how we had looked. Kind of just felt like it was a setup for, okay, you're playing a good team, you've been losing ugly. This is probably a game you lose. And after the first half, it looked like it was going to be a runaway. I don't know what's going on with this Eagles OC. Hopefully, the stern talking to he got from Jalen Hurts on the sideline kind of knocked some sense into him. Because look, they came out of halftime, and the offense went from, oh, we're going to hand the ball to Saquon, or we're going to check down. That was the whole offense. It went from that to, okay, you know what? Let's go out there. Hurts, AJ, Devontae. AJ Devontae, beat your man. Hurts, slinging it all over the field to him. There was, at one point, I think they had one drive where, you know, they had 2 or 3 long third down conversions on just AJ one-on-one, you know, making a great play and Hurts giving him a chance to do it. And so, again, when you have a team as talented as the Eagles, look, I understand Saquon is the best running back in the league. And I still think our best chance to win is not Hurts going out and doing what he did last week. It's heavy run and let Hurts kind of play off that. But you got to open up the playbook more. And Jalen showed you can open up the playbook more outside of running, check downs, or deep shots. He can throw those intermediate routes, and he had some incredible throws in that second half. And so shout out to Jalen Hurts, man, because he definitely he put the Superman cape on and saved the day essentially, because it was, like I said, it was trending towards a really bad loss, in which I was planning on, you know, after the first half, I'm thinking, okay, well, now I kind of have to reevaluate this, because look, you have 2 ugly wins against, you know, teams where you probably should have lost the game, and then you play another team, and, you know, 2 ugly wins against teams you should have lost against, one being terrible, the other being the Chiefs, where, you know, they lose Xavier Worthy and they don't really have anybody that can win one-on-one, and still should have lost that game. And then you come in, you play a Rams team that's rolling, talented contenders, and they roll you. You know, again, like I said, it was a lot of similarities to what I saw a couple years ago after the Super Bowl. And I think this, again, they have to build on it. It still was an ugly game, and they still should have lost this. You know, you get bailed out by, you know, Jordan Davis at the end there with the blocked field goal on essentially not a chip shot, but a very makeable field goal for the Rams to win it. And so obviously still got a lot to work on. That secondary is not looking great, but bright spots at least coming out of it is, look, Jalen Hurts looked great. And hopefully the OC can figure out what he's doing over there. And so that's going to lead me into this, man, because, obviously we always talk and we always hear on these sports shows as far as, quarterback rankings. And, a lot of people have top 4 decided. I think it's top 3. I think Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Lamar are firmly cemented. The Joe Burrow one gets interesting because when he's healthy and he's got a not worst defense in the league, he slings it and he's great. And again, one of the few people who's gone up against the best quarterback in the league and beat him in a big moment. And so again, I don't have him as like a solid. I think he kind of fluctuates because of the injury stuff and then not making the playoffs and things like that. But Jalen Hurts has always been one where it's like he's kind of hard to judge because he does exactly what the Eagles need him to do to win, right? Which is hand the ball off to Saquon, run the tush push, and then, make throws here and there to that, to move the chains or make a big play. And look, it's still tough because when you look at him and when you look at that Eagles offense, one of the best O-lines in the league, best running back in the league, top 12 receivers in the league, top 15 receivers in the league, a top, probably AJ probably is top 5, Devontae probably in that top 12-ish area. Goddard, one of the best tight ends in the league. So you have this crazy, crazy talented offense. And so he's not asked to do too much. But a game like we saw where Saquon doesn't have it and offense looks dead in the water and he comes out and does what he does, I feel comfortable moving him into probably that top 5 area. And I think him and Joe Burrow are now battling for that 4th best quarterback. You could throw Justin Herbert in there. I think that he has now shown, wow, yes, I do what we need to do to win. And even though he does, look, let me not say we don't. We do grade it on a little bit of curve for Burrow because he's got, Jamar and T. We say, okay, well, you look at these other guys, Pat, Josh, Lamar, they don't really have anything like what Joe or Jalen has, right? But, I mean, I don't see how you can look at how he played in the Super Bowl and even in the Super Bowl prior to that one, where, I mean, yes, he did make that big mistake, but toe-to-toe with Mahomes, had an incredible game. This last Super Bowl had an incredible game. This last week, comes out throwing the ball all over the field, has an incredible game, saves them. While yes, he probably does have the most, not even probably, he has the most talented offense in the league and the most talented probably skill position set and O-line combination in the league. You still got to go out there and make the throws, and that's what he's doing. And so I think this last game for me, and again, take it with a grain of salt, I'm an Eagles fan. Try not to be biased with it, though. I didn't have him in the top 5 prior to this, but I think after that, it's you have your top 3. Like I said, you have Mahomes, Josh, Lamar, and then I think that 4th spot, Joe Burrow, you can make the case. Justin Herbert, with how he's playing this year, possibly. But Jalen Hurts, I think, I wouldn't have Herbert in there yet. I don't think he's done enough. I think it's Jalen and Joe Burrow in that 4th spot. But look, let's go ahead and we're going to move over to the Chiefs because look, finally got their first win. And look, it you know wasn't great. It wasn't terrible. Um, Offense, it looks like they finally kind of got rolling there. Um, Mahomes to Thornton looks like look when Thornton looks like he's obviously he's a burner, but he's had a couple times these last few weeks where it's like and we've seen it touchdown passes, big time throws. Him and Mahomes are kind of finally starting to click, which is good for right now. But also when you look at moving forward, Thornton's going to be your fourth receiver. And so right now, obviously you're dealing with your probably fourth receiver being your one or two receiver every week. But it also just shows that look, when this offense gets healthy with Xavier and they get, Rasheed back, this offense can do some damage. They ran the ball a little bit better. The O line was good still, so I like that. And look, the defense, again, I'm not a big Russell Wilson fan. I don't think that 450 yards was any indication of what he's actually like anymore. But look, that defense was really good. Malik Neighbors, I don't care who's throwing him the ball. He's going to get some catches, and he against that defense last week, against that Chiefs defense, he was missing all game. And so if you're a Chiefs fan, if you like the Chiefs, obviously, right now it's just kind of getting in the win column is a win. Um, Getting a little bit of kind of momentum on that offense is a win. The defense showing up the way it did, that's a win. But again, it's against the Giants. And the Giants, not a great team by any stretch, probably not even an average team. But the defense is really good, and they do have some talent on that roster. And so, getting a win is getting a win. I think looking at it from my point of view as somebody who, like I said, I like the Chiefs. I root for the Chiefs as well. I'm not as I'm an Eagles fan. Like that's my fandom. The Chiefs, I enjoy watching. I like Mahomes. I root for greatness, and so I'll always root for them and everything. But as somebody who does that, I definitely feel better about how they're looking right now. Looks like Mahomes has kind of started getting it rolling again. And again, when you think about them getting those receivers back and those weapons back, I think that should help with the run game. And again, you should see that offense start to roll again. And then lastly, man, look, another amazing, amazing game. So sticking with two power hitters, heavyweights, we had the Lions and the Ravens. And so look, I'm gonna start on the Lions side because I owe y'all an apology. I thought this was going to be a regression season, especially after seeing week one. After losing both coordinators, I thought that this season was going to probably be a little tough for y'all. And look, y'all right now, it's looking like I was wrong. That offense had a lot of creativity to it, something that I was like, oh, okay, I'm seeing some Ben Johnson here. And now it's kind of making me wonder. I'm like, I obviously Ben Johnson was instrumental in a lot of those plays from last year, but it seems like he there's some influence from him that's still there. And so, look, that offense was playing great, had a lot of they were having fun, had a lot of wrinkles to it, and it looked like the Lions that we've grown accustomed to seeing. And that defense, look, I know they gave up 30. One of the touchdowns was a garbage time touchdown. If you watch the game, the score is no indication of how well that Lions defense played. I think they had 7 or 8 sacks on Lamar, had a couple forced fumbles, should have had a 1 or 2 interceptions. Like the defense played incredible. And I mean, a couple goal line stands against Lamar and Derrick Henry and the Ravens team. Like, you got to tip your hat to them. They played incredible. And so, again, y'all, an apology. I think the Lions are firmly back in that contender status, where I kind of had them on the outskirts coming in just based on what they had lost. And then definitely after that week 1 loss. But now, yeah, it's hard to deny what they look like, and they're looking dominant again. So, but let's go to the Ravens, man. And so the reason I wanted to finish up here with the Ravens is it's panic time in Baltimore, I think. Now, look, they might come out next week or this week, I guess, and roll the Chiefs. And if they do, look, I guarantee you everyone's going to be like, see, worrying about the Ravens. You didn't need to do that, blah, blah, blah. See, they're fine. They're fine. But again, I think when you just look at this Ravens team, it's just a lot of odd things, right? So Lamar, if you watch the game, Lamar just looked very kind of pressed all game, very uneasy all game, as far as just not even like uneasy in the pocket or anything, like just, coming off the field after, an empty possession, things like that, just looking a little stressed, a little pressed, which is not something, I've grown accustomed to seeing from Lamar. Derrick Henry, fumble problems, and he's on the sideline tripping, which I get. I mean, I think I saw a stats the first time in his career he's lost a fumble in 3 consecutive games, or fumbled in 3 consecutive, something like that. But he's coming over to the sideline, you know, upset, visibly upset, not throwing a tantrum, but y'all get what I'm saying. And so you couple all that in, couple it with the fact of, okay, they're 1-2 now, and their 1 win against the Browns, I mean, they didn't look good in it. The Browns thoroughly outgained them in yards, just weren't able to put the ball in the end zone. So you could easily be 0-3, and it's just kind of goes back to what's always been kind of their problem, right? Well, when they play really good teams, they tend to either beat themselves or not really play Ravens football. And look, that's what I'm not even going to say they beat themselves this week or like caused, obviously they had the fumbles and things like that, but the Lions took it to them. The Lions played. It's almost like the Ravens didn't think the Lions were going to come in ready to punch them in the mouth. And that's exactly what the Lions did. The Lions, we've grown accustomed to the Ravens being this, my whole life almost, being this smash mouth, hard nose, tough team. And the Lions out-Ravened the Ravens. The Lions were the more aggressive team. They were the more physical team. They just took it to them. And so, if you're the Ravens, you get a loss to another good team where you already, that's kind of been your kryptonite is good teams. It's against the NFC, which Lamar never loses to. It's just a lot of weird things going on in Baltimore right now. And like I said, they might come out and we're going to talk about that game in a little bit. They might come out and roll the Chiefs. I still think it's not full 5-alarm panic time, but there's something there. Even if they come out, roll the Chiefs, I would say when we look back at the season and we're like, what happened to the Ravens? Why weren't they as good as we thought? I think come back to this episode, point to the first 3 weeks, and that's going to be your answer. And so, look, man, that wraps it up for our week 2 recap. And so we're going to look ahead to a couple games here. Obviously, we have some really big ones, and then I'm going to point out the one we're going to go back to a thing we did last year as far as just kind of our underrated watch. So a game where it's like it might not get all the headlines, but should be a good one to watch if you're looking for a good game. And so we'll start off with, man, Micah's return home. Micah going back to the Packers, or Micah going back to the Cowboys. Packers, Cowboys, and look, Jerry Jones came out, so he got asked, is Micah going to get a tribute video? And Jerry said no. And you know what? I'm not even too, look, y'all know I like to look for things with the Cowboys. I'm not even too upset about him saying no. Like if it was just like, hey, you're gonna give Mike a tribute video, say, no. He was a great player for us. Just we're not gonna do it. Whatever. But when he's again, I think it's all about the messaging here, right? When Jerry comes out and it's like, no, we're not going to give him a video tribute. It's not like he's Emmitt Smith or anything. It's like Jerry almost can't help but take shots at Micah. And obviously, just from how everything went down, Jerry still feels slighted. I'm sure the fact that the Packers look like a contender and the Cowboys look like the Cowboys this year probably has something to do with that as well. And it's you're also talking about, hey, you're gonna give a video tribute to the guy that made your decision look really, really bad and look like you might have tanked your own season. And so I think, again, it's just kind of Jerry being petty. I'm not even upset about the not giving him the video tribute. I think I think they should have. I mean, look, he was a guy who was your best player for 4 years, whatever it is. You drafted him. He was Mr. Cowboys all the time. Wearing Cowboys gear, everything on his podcast. And so I think, the right thing to do, probably just give him a little video tribute, let the fans, cheer. They don't have too much to cheer for in Dallas. I think that also might have something to do with it. Like, Jerry doesn't want them cheering for the other team before they start booing his team. And so I think it's just, again, the messaging was just, I think, off. And to me, it just shows that Jerry's the ex who can't stop talking and talking badly about his ex, but like trying to convince you, right? Like we've all had that friend who breaks up with a girl and it's like, oh yeah, well, like she was, yeah, I broke up with her because she didn't do this, and you're like, dude, I'm trying to watch the game. Nobody even brought up your ex. He's like, yeah, well, it's just I'm just better off without her. Like that's Jerry right now. That's the vibes that Jerry is given with this Micah Parsons trade. It's like, Jerry, who are you trying to convince, us or yourself right now? But look, so with that, I think the question is, does Dallas have any chance at winning this game? And I think absolutely not. I think this game is even Jordan Love proof. Like, I don't think Jordan Love could do enough wrong that would give away the game to the Cowboys. The Cowboys defense is too bad. Their offense is, without CD, is going to have trouble moving the ball at all. To me, there is no possible scenario in which the Cowboys get a win here. And so I'm picking the Packers on this one. Next game, man, we got Colts and Rams. And so, look, big question here is, are the Colts and Daniel Jones for real? And so, look, you're going to have two teams that are started the year strong. I was going to say two legitimate teams, but here's my thing. I do not think the Colts are for real. I think this Daniel Jones and the Colts, it's kind of similar to, and I'm not even going to take credit for this analogy. I was trying to think of another one, or this comparison. I was trying to think of another one. I couldn't, but it's very reminiscent of the New Orleans Saints last year, when Derek Carr was coming out and slinging it, and we're like, oh my gosh, are the Saints contenders after 4 weeks? And then, they kind of revert back to what they are. I think you're going to see Daniel Jones once they get some film on him with the Colts, how they're moving. I fully expect him to regress. I cannot see him being an MVP candidate at the end of the year, and I cannot see the Colts being legitimate contenders. But for this game, you're talking about going against a Rams team who just had a loss in one of the worst ways you can have it. Very emotional loss against a team that has, in recent times, talking about the Eagles, basically owned them, and with a chance to win the game and kind of reset the narrative on that moving forward, and you lose on a blocked field goal that gets returned. It's a tough way to lose. Even still, I think they come out more motivated, and so I think the Rams win this game. I think you do see a Daniel Jones kind of pullback game. Not saying that this is going to be the start of a full-on regression. I think he might have a few more weeks for that, but I definitely don't think you're going to see him looking like mini Josh Allen like he has been. Next, man, we got the Eagles and the Bucks. And so, look, this is a game I had circled on the calendar right when I saw it. Unfortunately, the question here is just going to be, can Baker conjure up some magic and overcome the injuries they have? And, we spoke on it some earlier where, have some O-line, Mike Evans. But I'm going to just run down over the last couple weeks what the Bucks are missing. So they're down 3 offensive linemen. Mike Evans now. Still don't have any Chris Godwin. And 3 defensive starters. So that's what the Bucks are missing. And so to me, what initially coming into the year I thought was going to be a very telling game about, and even after week 1, I was like, oh, that Bucks game, the Rams game and the Bucks game, I was like, those are going to be really big because 1 might be for seeding at the end of the year, and 2, you're talking about the Rams who are legitimate contenders, and then the Bucks who are the last team to beat the Eagles and always give the Eagles fits. And so I think with that, this has unfortunately turned into, I think the Eagles are just going to kind of out-talent them. I don't think there's going to be enough magic that Baker can come up with to overcome the amount of injuries, especially to that O-line and especially to the wide receivers, to where the Bucks can win this. Again, I think with the Eagles right now, the ways that their struggles are going to be in the secondary and the pass rush. And unfortunately, those are the 2 places where the Bucks could have really kind of taken advantage of them. It's also where all their cluster injuries are. And so to me, this is an Eagles win. I think they just kind of overwhelm the Bucks being short-handed. And so I think we get an Eagles win here as well. And then second to last, I guess, we have another heavyweight matchup. We got Chiefs and Ravens. And so, look, both 1 and 2 teams, I think when you look at this game, the big question is going to be, who needs to win more? And so, like I said, I explained it earlier as far as how I kind of root for the Chiefs as well. But I think with this, and I also explained, with the Ravens, how I think that, even if the Ravens come in and roll, it's not necessarily, it's going to appear, if they do come in and roll, it'll appear as though, okay, they've figured it out. I don't think that'll be the case. But I do think that this win is much, much bigger for Baltimore. I think Baltimore absolutely needs this win. And it has nothing to do with seeding, has nothing to do with anything like that. Obviously, the Chiefs are kind of in a more dire circumstance as far as, in their division, because, you fall down 1-3. Chargers, looking at they're 3-0 right now, possibly being 4-0, but even if 3-1, with the tiebreaker against the Chiefs as of right now, it's just you're starting to dig a hole. Luckily, the Broncos haven't been great. The Raiders haven't been great. None of the AFC really has been that great outside of, the Bills and kind of just the top teams. So I don't think it's necessarily a problem as far as playoff seeding, which is why I'm not I'm not really worried about it from a Chiefs standpoint, right? I think the Chiefs start 1-3. I still think they make the playoffs, and I think the Chiefs look they're the Chiefs. They've shown that it doesn't matter. They can go on the road. They can win in the playoffs. They can win at home in the playoffs. They can beat any team in the playoffs. So for them, I think it's just, oh, we lose. We got to, get the ship right, get our guys back, start rolling off some wins, which I think they will. And I think they'll be fine. Because I don't think it becomes a mental thing for them against Baltimore or anything like that. It's a team they've dominated. So, but from the Ravens standpoint, if you come in after losing how you did in weeks, in this last week, playing how you did in the last 3 weeks, losing in 2 of these 3, if you come in and the Chiefs, who, while they showed a little bit of life against that Giants team, are still far from a finished product or what we assume they're going to look like. If you come in and lose to that team that you typically lose to, I think that is, again, I don't think they're in any real like panic mode for the playoffs or anything like that. I think they'll probably still win the division, honestly. If they don't, that would be a shock to me in itself, even starting 1-3, because I just think that division is so bad outside of them. But if you lose to the Chiefs, who right now look like a shell of themselves, even with the little bit of life they've shown in this last game, if you lose to that team, I think mentally and just the vibe in that locker room will go from what I already think is a little off and not bad, but a little indifferent. It could get real bad, real ugly. And so I think for the Ravens, this is almost, to me, this is almost a must win, not for the playoffs, but just for their season. Meaning, if they lose this game, I think, even if they make the playoffs, whatever, I think this season is cooked for them. Whereas if you can win this, you can at least, you have something to kind of build on. And it's like, okay, we always have trouble with the Chiefs. We beat them. Okay, you can kind of roll that kind of emotional and mental space. Whereas if you lose, I think it just could be shattering. And I don't think you'd see it throughout the season. I think they'll still get their wins. But come playoff time, I think that's where, again, you see just a big kind of regression or a game like we typically see from them in the playoffs where we're like, that's what are they doing? That's not the Ravens team we saw all year. And the last one, man, so this is going to be the kind of underrated watch of the week. And so for me, that is going to be the Jags and Niners. Oh, and sorry, for the Chiefs Ravens, I actually do have the Ravens getting that must win that they need. I have them winning that. So, anyways, going back to it, watch of the week, underrated watch of the week, Jags and Niners. So you have the 49ers who, look, they're off to this hot start. They've been getting some ugly wins without Purdy. Mac Jones driving them down for game winners. So kind of dealing with all their injuries, still getting the wins. Going up against the Jags team where, look, again, same thing. Ugly wins this year. Trevor Lawrence has looked great in moments, has looked in moments. And so I think this is actually going to be a big game because I think that you have one Trevor Lawrence going up against a defense that's kind of got some injuries on it, but has a great D coordinator, and you're going up against Kyle Shanahan on that other end. So I think it now look, it could be an ugly, ugly game. I think there is that possibility. But you do have some of those weapons coming back from the Niners. It looks like Jawan Jennings should be back. I'm not sure about Purdy's status, but this could also be a game where you could see some offense. I think with Trevor, still trying to get in rhythm with those receivers. And then you got the Niners, Kyle Shanahan. Anytime you have Christian McCaffrey, a quarterback that's got a average quarterback pulse and any kind of halfway decent weapons, they can put up points as well. And so I'd say that would be my underrated watch week. Again, it's a gamble. It's a gamble. It could be real, real ugly. But that's the one I'm going with. I'm going with a Jags win. I think that Jags offense gets rolling this game, and that's why I think it could be a really good watch. All right, y'all. That does it for us here, man. Like I said, we will not be back this week. The plan is to eventually get back to twice a week. I know we haven't been able to, but we're gonna try to get on that moving forward after this week. But look, as always, I appreciate y'all. Let's Be Real podcast. Go ahead, follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. You can listen to us on YouTube. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Like, rate, subscribe, hit the bell, do all the stuff. Share it with people, man. And like always, I appreciate you, and we'll see y'all next week.